to the track, the wall, makes the leap, and makes the catch! Amazing catch by Junior! He got it! A perfect game! 13 strikeouts! Bryant pitching out towards straightaway center field, drifting out toward right center, shot at the wall, leaps up, and he makes the catch! Mike Trout with another spectacular grab! There is out number 2. Bonds hit play high. Hits it deep. It is out of here. 7:56. What a special moment for Barry Bonds. Swinging a long drive. Deep to right. Going. Goodbye. He has done it. He has changed the game of the night.
Hello and welcome to the Champions Adjust podcast, a premier baseball podcast covering everything from short hops to bat flips to everything in between, to youth baseball to MLB baseball to occasionally college baseball, possibly some high school baseball.
There you go.
You never know. Potentially other sports, but right now we're focused on baseball. Thank you for being here. This is season 2 of the Champions Adjust podcast, episode number 2 of season 2. We've had 10 episodes on season 1, and we did 4 special postseason, 4 or 5 special postseason episodes of this podcast as well. Season 2 will range from anywhere between 10 to 15 episodes, and then I'm sure we'll do more special episodes, more postseason, more seasons, all of that stuff. But that really depends on viewership, people subscribing, people listening. We're really happy to do this for one person who watches it, but we'd love to have a large audience to share more insights, knowledge, and experience about the game of baseball and what we're doing. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. The best way to support the pod is just share with a friend.
Yeah.
Share with a friend. Subscribe to our newsletter at champsadjust.com and go on Anchor. Watch all of our episodes. Share them with a friend. Review us on Apple. And then support it on Anchor. You can donate $1, $2, $3 a month,
$100 a month,
$100 a month, whatever you want, whatever you feel is worthy for this
$1,000 a month, whatever.
$1,000 a month. But it all goes to creating these episodes, creating clips to put on social media, and getting some information to present to you guys on a semi-weekly basis. So cheers, thanks for that. But the biggest news in the world today. You know what it is?
No idea.
You don't know what it is?
I'm excited to hear this.
The biggest news in the world today is that I cut my mullet.
Oh, God, yes.
I cut my mullet. I decided that was it. There was no real reason behind it. So if you view this podcast via YouTube, you're seeing the fresh cut now. And no real reason behind it, just decided to go for it.
My biggest issue is you gave no heads up to people.
No heads up.
Love. Like I showed up to practice on Tuesday and I didn't recognize you. And I'm really went home to Lulu, who actually told me beforehand. I just didn't believe her. And it was a tough swallow for me. Thank you. It's a good hug.
Okay, but that's it for all that.
Yep.
Now we're getting to the pod. We're going to talk about 2 things today, probably a shorter episode. We'll talk about what free agents are left on the market, where we think they're going to go, predictions for that. We'll talk about what happened at the Hall of Fame voting, and
little update on the negotiations. Very short segment on that.
We'll go right into the update on MLB negotiations.
Yeah, so we talked about this 2 weeks ago. I think our prediction was nothing good was going to happen and no movement was going to occur next time we talked, and officially zero movement has occurred. MLBPA this last week. We are actually, by the way, filming on February 6th on a Sunday. This will come out on Thursday, so maybe some more movement because the owners will be meeting in Florida this week. Mm-hmm. As of today, MLBPA made an offer last week. MLB refused to make a counteroffer, instead asking for official government mediation. This predictably pissed off the MLBPA, saying, hey, you're not negotiating good faith. Alex Woods, San Francisco Giant pitcher, tweeted out that it's weird to ask for federal government assistance in negotiations when no effort was made in the first place. MLB believes that the only way forward is from official mediation. MLBPA says that's great, but you made zero effort in the first place. And pitchers and catchers report in 2 weeks. So as we talked about 2 weeks ago, I think most players, most coaches are gearing up for a little bit of a longer offseason. In fact, I'll be seeing a Major League coach next weekend, on the 18th weekend. And he's planning on making the trip to Dallas, and I'll be seeing him, through mutual connections, just because he doesn't really have a whole lot else to do right now.
Yep.
Because that's what Major League coaches and players and minor league coaches and players are really doing, is just, acting under the impression that pitchers and catchers will report, but at this point, it's pretty obvious they won't in time. So, looking more likely like the spring training will be pushed back, as could the season, and there's already been conversations about game cancellations.
Wow.
So,
well, there it is. You heard it from our expert here on the Champions Just podcast, Coach Bodson, letting you know the update.
You're welcome.
And moving on to point number 2 of this episode is free agents.
Yeah.
MLB free agents. There's some real big superstar type names left in free agency.
And the trade market as a result.
Some of them, just to name a few, right? We have Carlos Correa, Freddie Freeman, a 33-year-old Clayton Kershaw. Didn't realize he was still that young, but he's been in the league a long time. Because he was very young when he started being a beast.
Absolutely.
You have Chris Bryant, right? You have Trevor Story, who hit a bomb off me in high school. Funny story.
Congratulations.
The ball is still going.
Sure.
Absolutely launched it. But that's what happens when you can hit 35 home runs in the big leagues. You hit a bunch of home runs in high school. So
let's get into it.
And then Nick Castellanos as well. But just to name a few. So let's start with Carlos Correa.
Okay, cool. Carlos Correa.
What are your thoughts? Where do you think he's going? How much money do you think he signs for? What's on your dome?
I think that, based off what we had discussed 2 weeks ago, you had Seager and Simeon going for an insane amount of money. And Baez going for probably considerably more than his market from the Tigers.
Right.
Correa's market is probably up to $35 to $38 million per year right now. There's only a few teams that can afford that. One of them still being the Tigers, so the Tigers are a really interesting organization. They have a lot of youth coming through the system right now. They have Miguel Cabrera coming off the books in 2 years. They have plenty of money to spend, and I still think that he goes back to AJ Hinch in Detroit, and I think Correa is going to end up signing with the Tigers.
You think that connection with his old coach?
I think that will make a huge difference.
With?
I think that can make a huge difference. They're very close. I think that LA is not really big on spending that much money. If they were to, then there's another player on the market that we're going to talk about in a second that they would be more likely to spend that money on. The Yankees aren't really that big of spenders anymore. The Angels have already spent $21 million on Syndergaard. Yep. They don't really have a need there. Also, people in LA just don't like Carlos Correa for obvious reasons.
Okay. So
I think Detroit is still the best fit for or Houston if he wants to go back and take the original offer, which was 5 years, $160 million, which is $32 million per year, which is right around what Seager made, and that's probably no longer Correa's market because of the Rangers.
Yeah.
So going back to it, I think that the Tigers are the move. The Rangers signed 2 of the top 4 shortstop prospects.
Yeah.
And they're going to have a all-star second baseman shortstop combo, and why not the Tigers doing the same thing?
Right.
With Baez and Correa in the middle infield.
Yeah. It says here that Correa reportedly turned down a 10-year offer worth $275 million.
Sure.
So he's looking.
That's 27.5.
Yeah.
Which is lower than the 5-year,
right,
32 per year that he'd already turned down. So 10-year, 275 doesn't make a ton of sense. I think what you're also saying right here is 10 years, $330 million is right around where he needs to be. He
just wants that big long contract.
Sure. Yeah,
that we've been seeing the premier players in professional baseball get.
Correct.
Your Trouts, your Harpers, things of that nature.
Right.
But Trout and Harper are really I mean, they're the gold standard, right? Those guys are the guys.
And they don't have any conspiracy theories or controversy surrounding them either.
Right.
Which is a big deal. Plus, they have a pin until this past year to stay healthy. I guess Trout hasn't really stayed healthy. He's shown
recently.
how great he is at the same time.
But there was a list of the top 100 baseball players that came out of all time, and Trout was 15, and he still has quite a bit to go in his career. So it's cool to be like in our prime while also watching someone else in their prime.
Yes,
it's very special.
I don't know if I'm in my prime. But
you are.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate it.
You're in your prime.
Yeah, cool.
Maybe you haven't reached it yet. You're climbing.
I'm trying to. I'm in the gym again.
Look at this.
So
Look at this steady climb.
There it is.
That's you.
I'm honestly trying to look like you.
I'm strapping the rocket ship to you, baby. Let's go. We're going straight up. Okay. So then we'll just go right to the other shortstop to get a little comparison here.
Yeah.
We'll talk Trevor Story.
Simply put, I think he goes to the Houston Astros. He's from Texas. He wants to stay in Texas. Mm-hmm. I think the Astros offer Trevor Story the exact same contract, which they don't have to. The same contract as they did Carlos Correa.
Yep.
Story would sign in a heartbeat. I think that even at $28 to $32 million a year, so it's 5 years, $140 million.
Yeah.
You're still in that range where Story would say yes, and the Astros obviously have that money. Mm-hmm. The Astros could easily just go right back to their farm system as shortstop. But if you have a guy like Trevor Story on the market who wants to play in Texas,
right?
Who I still believe the Rangers would have been in better shape spending a little bit less money on Story than going after Seager. Mm-hmm. I think that would be a great fit for the Astros. Story provides a huge bat in a pretty decent spot in the field for a team that wants to stay above, at the top of the AL West. Now you have the Astros, the Rangers, who spent $500 million to be probably third or fourth in the AL West. You have the Mariners, who are, we'll get into them in a second, but they're still really looking to increase their bat situation. Yeah. I think that the Astros are a big splash away. And as soon as this lockout ends, I think they're going to make a big splash in Trevor Story.
Yeah, I would have really enjoyed seeing Trevor Story back in the DFW area, because that's where he hit the bomb off me in high school.
Sure.
And I think that's really cool. But I'm not a huge Houston Astros fan, not really because of anything specific, right? I grew up here. So the Rangers have been a fan, but the Rangers aren't even my favorite team. None of that is important. We don't even have to get into it all.
Isn't that funny that we both live in Dallas and the Rangers aren't either one of our favorite teams?
Yeah, go Cardinals.
Go Cardinals.
And Giants. Anyways, but yeah, I'd love to see Trevor Story back in Texas. I think that would be cool for him, his family, his people, and he's another premier guy.
He clearly wanted to end up in Dallas.
Yeah.
It was very clear he wanted to end up in Dallas, and I think now he can end up in Texas at least. So I think that would be really cool. Yeah, I agree.
So let's go. Let's go to another free agent, guy who just won a World Series title.
Yeah, that's a weird situation.
Guy who just won a World Series title, has been a staple in Atlanta for a long time.
Sure.
He is loved there. Similar to, I think, maybe Derek Jeter in New York, about how much he's loved by the fans, the people, the organization. Don't know him personally at all, but seems like a stand-up guy.
Sure.
Don't know him one bit.
What's his name?
But we're talking about Freddie Freeman.
Yeah, okay, correct.
Talking about Freddie Freeman.
Yeah.
And he's looking for a deal. He's looking for probably a long-term deal.
He is.
He's not in the bottom half of his career. He's an MVP guy 2 years ago.
Sure.
Had a hell of a year this year. Played really well in the postseason.
Yep.
Is absolutely a gold standard at first base, besides probably Paul Goldschmidt being a little bit better than him defensively.
Sure.
That's why Goldschmidt won the Gold Glove.
Yep.
But still standard at there over at first. What do you think?
I think that, the most logical place for him right now is Atlanta. He wants to be in Atlanta. Atlanta wants him to stay. He's from Georgia. He turned down a 5-year, $125 million contract from them. Which is approximately is exactly $25 million per year, asking for an extra year. So that he wanted 6 years, $150, and Atlanta said no. So there's one of two things that can happen here. I guess one of three things. Either he finally comes out of here saying, "Okay, fine, I'll take the 5-year, $125 to stay in Atlanta." Mm-hmm. Atlanta comes back and says, "Okay, fine, we'll overpay you. We won't want to give you that extra year because look at what the I mean, we don't need to get into it right now, but the Braves don't want to handcuff themselves to where they can't sign some of the other guys that they have in their system right now, which we can get in. I can pull up a list of all their players that are about to come off the books in the next 3 years they want to keep, which is why they don't want to offer that extra year because of Acuna and all those guys. So the alternative then is the Dodgers, right? The Dodgers need a left-handed bat. They don't really believe in Max Muncy right now. Freeman fits in perfectly as a defensive and offensive player in Dodger Stadium. And that would actually make sense for the Atlanta Braves if they're like, hey, go there and we're going to trade for Matt Olson, who's actually from Atlanta, who the A's are currently trying to offload. So if that were to happen and Freeman were to end up with the Dodgers, which is the other sensible place for him, the Braves would turn around and they would send prospects to New York for Rizzo, or they would send prospects to the A's for Matt Olson, who is a cheaper version. And I don't like saying the word cheaper because, more affordable is a nicer way of saying it, but he's not a more affordable, he's a cheaper version of Freddie Freeman at this point of his career. Not nearly as good defensively, a decent bat, but a higher strikeout rate. And Matt Olson, but Matt Olson is from Atlanta, so that would be a really good fit for the Braves. But I think that the Braves will hold on to him. And I think the Dodgers are going to have to go another route. The Dodgers would obviously prefer to sign Freddie Freeman to a giant deal and not spend their prospects right now. Because they have the money. They have Scherzer off the books. They just signed Chris Sale, but they lost Seager. So getting Freeman would really solidify their place in the offseason. But I think that Freddie Freeman is going to give the Braves every opportunity to say no first. So we'll see. But right now it's Atlanta or Dodgers, and then if the Dodgers end up getting him, then Atlanta will turn around and trade for Olson or Rizzo and replace him.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would like to see him stay in Atlanta, but there's, again, I don't know him personally, and there's too many other factors to consider as to why he wouldn't stay. And we're just obviously speculating on his decision and where we think it would be cool for him to go. So good luck to you, Freddie Freeman. Hope it works out well for you and your family. Two more guys, and then we'll move on from this free agency stuff. We have Chris Bryant. Chris Bryant, longtime Cub, played with the Giants a little bit last season. Now he's up for a big contract somewhere.
He did. He had a really tough 2020. He had a great 2021. You ready for my prediction?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Did you know,
baby.
Did you know that the Mariners went out and got Robbie Ray?
Yeah.
And they are still $20 million under their payroll from last year.
Robbie Ray, Cy Young Award winner, 2000 last season.
She talked about 2 weeks ago.
Stud.
And Robbie Ray,
left-handed,
signed $23 million per year over 5 years, $115 million contract with the Mariners. And then the Mariners are still $20 million right now, year over year, under their payroll. So they can just sign somebody $20 million 1 year and be right where they were last year. Which, I mean, what that doesn't say $100 million a year or $20 million a year, does it? That's about 18. What is...
We're doing math here.
Doing math. Well, that's 30.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure if he would get that. But Chris Bryant, I think, it goes to the Mariners. Mariners, they're not done spending. They're trying to beat out the Astros at the top of the AL West.
They
want to strike with the irons hot with the team they have right now, with the youth they have right now. Their starting third baseman just retired. Last year is the first year in Chris Bryant's career that he played more outfield than third base. But he can easily play third base. That Kyle Seager, Corey Seager's brother, just retired during the offseason. And Seattle needs another big bat. So if he does warrant $30 million per year over 6 years, which I don't necessarily see, but
could be.
I think the Mariners. I heard a lot about this and read a lot about this before the deadline that Chris Bryant was nearing a deal with the Mariners, who really want to create a story. But who are both still on the market, by the way. But now their third baseman's retired, and Chris Bryant could be the most logical and more affordable choice between those three.
I would really like to see Chris Bryant in Seattle. I mean, we talked about it in the last episode of one of our postseason episodes about the Mariners really liking to see them in the playoffs. And he would be a good addition because he is a playoff. He knows how to do in the playoffs. He's won a World Series title. He was in the playoffs last year with the Giants, multiple times in the postseason with the Cubs. So he can bring that veteran ability to the Mariners and be that clubhouse leader for their playoff push, because that's where they're just right on the brink, right? So they need that little extra to get them over this long haul they've had of not being in the postseason. Right. And he's someone that could do that, I think. So,
agreed.
Cool pick. Last guy we're going to talk about from the Cincinnati Reds, Nick Castellanos, stud player. The dude can swing it.
He's such a personality too.
And he's fun. You
remember, and those of you listening, that he got into it with Yadier Molina. And then after the game, he asked for his autograph.
Right.
He's just a fan of the game.
He respects Yadi, and he's playing
respects
with passion.
The game. Yeah.
He's playing with heart, and that's all Yadi's done for the last 20 years.
Sure.
And so he gets it too. But Yadi's going to protect his guys.
Yep.
And he's going to protect his pitchers, 100%, full stop, no matter what. And Nick's just out there trying to get after it.
Yeah.
And the dude can freaking swing it, bro. He can swing it from the right-handed side of the plate. He can swing it, and I'm very interested to see where he lines up. Who might hit in front of him, who might hit behind him in a lineup, which is very important when it comes to getting pitches to hit. So, he could receive something pretty good. I don't know if he's an everyday DH if he goes to the American League.
Or the National League, because there's still there's still a lot of opportunity for DH, Universal DH in the National League. Two teams I have on my radar. One is a team that was very hot on his trail before the lockout. That's the Giants. Who anticipate losing Chris Bryant, so they could easily replace him with Nick Castellanos. Yeah. Also, the White Sox. The White Sox have a big need in right field. Adam Eaton is currently, arguably their right fielder.
Yeah.
Replace him with Nick Castellanos. They are $16 million underneath the luxury tax right now, so they have money to spend. They have a lot of talent on that White Sox team. And he can fill a huge need in South Chicago, but I think that the two teams I'm looking at most are the San Francisco Giants to replace Chris Bryant, or the White Sox who have money to spend and need a big bat in right field.
Great. These people, CBS Sports, are talking about that JD Martinez, who is a designated hitter for the Boston Red Sox, signed a contract for 5 years worth $109 million prior to the 2018 season, and they're thinking, that his deal might be something similar, 5 years, $115 million type stuff. If someone's lucky enough to get his.
And they're referring to him just being a DH.
Which So if he does play right field, it could be a little bit more.
Sure.
Depending on who gets him. But yeah, so those are just the top. There's a lot more free agents left that are very capable of playing professional baseball, obviously. But we're just
real quick. You mentioned Clayton Kershaw, Dodgers.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think that the Dodgers let him go. I don't think he's going to leave the Dodgers. I think a lot of Rangers fans think that he's going to come over, but the Rangers should not spend the kind of money they would need to get him back home.
Yeah.
And I think as a baseball fan, I want to see him retire as a Dodger. So I foresee him staying in LA.
Yeah, 33-year-old Clayton Kershaw,
who at 33 is a number 3 or number 4. That's where his career's gone. His body's starting to break down, and a lot of 33-year-olds are the pinnacle of their career, and he's not anymore.
He's thrown a lot of innings.
Yes.
And but he's an absolute beast of a pitcher.
Yes.
And he's someone who, if he's not throwing 100 miles an hour anymore, will still figure out how to get guys out. Right? And that's what pitchers do. Mm-hmm. They adjust because champions adjust. He's a champion.
Dang right.
As an individual and as a team member as well. And so those are just the top free agents. We'll keep you updated as we keep recording episodes to see where those guys go. But good stuff, Coach Bonson.
Thank you.
All right, last topic of this episode. We just want to touch on the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame is very, very interesting, and it's a hot button topic right now. And we had a segment in season 1 where we did Hall of Fame or not. We'll probably bring that back at some point. And I really like that segment. We just brought a guy at the beginning of the episode, and we just all gave our opinion on whether he was a Hall of Famer or not. Now we see the voting is it's interesting. That's what I'll say. It's interesting. But before we get into that, we just want to say congratulations to Big Papi.
Yes.
David Ortiz, Hall of Famer, got in. Congratulations. A beautiful testament to your career, your abilities, your personality, the way you played the game. Lovely, love it, fantastic. And so I'll tell you just a little bit of the 2020 Baseball Hall of Fame voting. Big Papi got 77%. Barry Bonds got 66%. Clemens, 65%. Scott Rowland, very interesting, 63%. I think Scott Rowland is a guy who will get in eventually. Kurt Schilling, 58%. Todd Helton, who I do think is a Hall of Famer, at 52%. Billy Wagner, 51%. Andrew Jones, 44%. Gary Sheffield, 40%. And Alex Rodriguez, 34%. That's just from 2022. A few of those guys on the list have reached their 10-year mark, so they will not be on the ballot anymore. I think Scott Rowland is at the top of the list to eventually get into the Hall of Fame out of these folks. And I think Todd Helton and Andrew Jones are a close second and third to eking in and getting enough percentage of votes to get into the Hall of Fame.
Sure.
And then if you want to touch more on it. But I also think Barry Bonds should be in the Hall of Fame because I think he's the greatest baseball player of all time. But that is not just like this like blanket statement. It's like a very complicated and nuanced what that statement means. And some of the other guys that fall into the Barry Bonds type category. But So I'll let you go.
Yeah, I mean,
and then I'll circle back. We'll circle back
sure.
to it.
Yeah, sure. David Ortiz, a figurehead of MLB, good for him. Essentially career DH.
Yep.
First ballot.
I don't
know. Second, third ballot, sure. I think even Red Sox fans who love him would agree generally that. I mean, who's the better player, Barry Bonds or David Ortiz? Who's the better player career-wise, Roger Clemens or David Ortiz?
I mean, even
David
Todd
Ortiz,
Helton.
I mean, it's
Todd
just
Helton and David Ortiz. Scott Rowland and David
first
Ortiz.
ballot Hall of Fame is such an honor, and I almost would have rather see a second straight year of no Hall of Famers than see David Ortiz get in as a first ballot guy in the last year of some of the guys who dropped off.
Right.
Right now, the Hall of Fame has frozen out three big names that are big time leaders. Right. Barry Bonds is a career leader in home runs, and we could talk about he juiced. Well, everybody had their leg up, right? Like Babe Ruth had a very, very short home run porch. Very short, like in the 200s feet short. So he had a leg up to get his career. We'll touch on Hank Aaron in a moment, who and Barry Bonds ended up beating. Everybody has their leg up on their career wins, right, and what they can lead in. But the leader in home runs, Barry Bonds. The leader in Cy Young Awards, Roger Clemens. And obviously, as we know, the leader in hits in Major League Baseball history, Pete Rose, are all frozen out of the Museum of Baseball History of the best to ever play the game, right? And we can talk about Pete Rose on a different segment, but he was banned for gambling, which is now a huge part of baseball openly.
Right.
And he still can't be in the Hall of Fame. Roger Clemens showed up on the Mitchell report, but nothing ever really got confirmed that he took PEDs. There was no real hard evidence that he took PEDs. Barry Bonds' whole different issue, was a Hall of Famer before he started the juice, but I mean, we can agree that hand-eye coordination isn't necessarily helped by steroids. You still have to be able to see and hit the ball, which we there's so much proof that that's a very hard thing to do.
Right. Do you know that when the year he hit 73 home runs, that he swung and missed less times than the amount of home runs he hit in 162 games?
Steroids don't help that. I mean, steroids can help with the home runs.
He swung and missed less than 73 times in 162 games of baseball.
So here's my issue.
How intense is that?
Yeah, very. Here's my issue with the Hall of Fame.
Wow.
A lot of people don't know this, but the Hall of Fame actually changed their rules in 2014. 2 years into Clemens and Bonds, who retired in the same year, which is why this was their last year mutually on the Hall of Fame ballot. 2 years in, they changed the rules. Before 2014, anyone who received a 5% vote or more could stay on the ballot for up to 15 years. As long as you kept on receiving 5% of the ballots, you can be on for, and with that rule, Clemens and Bonds would be on for another 5 years.
Right.
In 2014, they changed the rules that players are only allowed to stay on the ballot for a maximum of 10 years no matter what. Both Bonds and Clemens' first year eligible was 2012. So basically this rule was made midway through, or 20% of their way through the Hall of Fame ballot. They said, hey, by the way, you only have 8 more years. As opposed to what they thought, which was under 13 years.
Because according to this, right, they would still be on the ballot for a bunch more.
Sure.
Because Bonds and Clemens both received 65 and 66%.
Yeah, which is really close.
Way above 5%.
And it's really close to that Hall of Fame.
For 5 more years, which would allow for more discussion about this very nuanced and complicated topic.
Which pisses me off for a whole different reason. Because let's talk about PEDs users who are in the Hall of Fame right now. Let's start with Pud Galvin, the first 300-win player in the history of Major League Baseball. He was in the 1880s, and he took something called the elixir of Brown Sequard. That is basically testosterone from the testicles of animals.
Jesus.
This guy literally took testosterone from the testicles of animals, took it, became the first 300-game winner in Major League Baseball history, and nobody talks about him. You want to talk about PED users? That's crazy. And then let's talk about amphetamines. Amphetamines, which were called greenies in the 70s and 80s, even before then, were a huge part of baseball. You take it now, you're banned. You cannot get in the Hall of Fame by the way things are going right now if you took amphetamines. Mike Schilt, Goose Gossage, Mickey Mantle, Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, all known amphetamine users. If any of those guys, I'll say those names again, Mike Schilt, Goose Gossage, Mickey Mantle, Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, if any of those guys took amphetamines today, they would not be allowed in the Hall of Fame by the way things are going right now.
Right.
So my biggest issue with what the Hall of Fame is doing right now, and I know I've touched on this in the past, is this is either the Hall of Ethics or the Hall of Fame, right? It's either the Hall of Ethics or the Hall of Fame. Right now, the Hall of Fame is trying to do both, and it's tainting the honor. Because again, Hank Aaron would not be in the Hall of Fame today if he got caught doing amphetamines in today's game.
Right.
He got caught years ago. During his career, actually post-career is when they really started to figure it out who was doing this. It was a huge part of the game, just like steroids is a big part of the game in the 90s and early 2000s. And you're keeping, those guys are allowed to stay in the Hall of Fame, but the steroid era guys are not. And it's just, to me, it has made the Hall of Fame an honor that I just could not care less about. And I think a lot of players feel the same way. As a fan, I just don't care that much about the honor anymore. I see David Ortiz as a first ballot Hall of Famer with Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens not allowed in the Hall of Fame, with Hank Aaron, a known amphetamine user, in the Hall of Fame currently. Those, from a logical perspective, don't make sense to me on a 100-year scale. And for that reason, I just don't really care anymore. I'll obviously look at it, but we were doing the segment, is this guy a Hall of Famer or is this guy not? It's so hard to tell now.
It's so hard to tell.
They're changing rules midway through the voting process. Guys who were really good but were probably third or fourth ballot guys are getting in the first ballot. Guys who are clearly first ballot numbers are not getting in at all. It's just, who knows?
There seems to just be this deep values conflict that MLB and the Hall of Fame voters are trying to make everyone happy. And in the process of trying to make everyone happy, they are making nobody happy.
Right.
And so regardless of what decision they make, which is totally up to them, they have to stick to one side of it and fully commit to it. Because regardless of what decision they make, one side is not going to be happy, right? You can't appease everybody. It's impossible.
Sure.
Right? Especially when you're dealing with something like this where opinions come from every walk of life. I'm sure there's thousands of baseball podcasts that talk about the same exact stuff they're talking about here. They may have a totally different opinion than us. They may have the same. But you can't make all of those podcasts or baseball writers or journalists happy. But what you can do is you have to stick to what you really believe in. You have to pick it, whatever it is, and you have to walk that line all the way, and you have to commit to it. Whether it's not having people in who took PEDs, whether it is allowing them in, whether there's a conversation about it, whether there's an asterisk next to their name, whether there's some sort of distinction that you're going to make about what you're going to do. You're not just going to have this wishy-washy, back and forth bullshit about what you think you should do to try to appease everyone, because that's impossible. So you have to stick to one thing, you have to fully commit to it as an organization, as a group of writers, and you have to walk that line with some fucking intensity.
Right.
Like this is what we're doing. And we know we're going to get heat from one side or the other, whatever that decision is. And it doesn't have to be a decision I like either. But you have to walk that line with some real intensity and line up your values so that when you vote people in and you do things, it means something again. Because the Baseball Hall of Fame was one of the most difficult things to get into in the history of sports.
Right.
Like no other Hall of Fame, MLB or NBA, NFL, those are not as hard, or they weren't as hard as the MLB.
Right.
There was a standard. There was a fucking real standard that you had to set to be here.
Yeah.
And we're going past that. We're thinking about all these other things. So if you want to make it about their personality, who they are off the field, how they were as a teammate, I love that. That means so much to me. Then stick by that.
Yeah.
Or if you want to be strictly just on their numbers as a baseball player and not how they treated anyone else, then do that too. But you have to stick with something, and you have to walk that line with some intensity. Just as I'm speaking now with a lot of intensity.
A lot of intensity. I love it.
So I just got fired up.
Fired up for practice now.
That's what I got to say.
Yep.
Coach Bodson and I, obviously we got our unis on. If you're watching via YouTube, we got our coaching jackets on. They're pretty sweet.
They are.
Wolfpack baseball.
Baby. Here we go.
We're about to go practice. It actually just snowed the last 3 days.
We'll see how it goes.
In Dallas, which is where we're at recording. So we're about to go to practice. We'll see how it goes. We may have a snow fight. We may make some snowmans.
Get the skis on, do PFPs.
But we're going to have a great time.
Sure.
Because it's Sunday. It's practice time.
Yeah.
Super Bowl's next week. Hopefully you guys watched this episode. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Bodson, you got any last minute thoughts?
No, I think we're good. I think we're running close to time. Let us know if you're watching, you're listening, any thoughts, any comments, any concerns, any feedback.
Yep.
So we continue improving on your experience as a listener, as a viewer. And I appreciate you guys taking the time with us.
I absolutely agree. And remember one thing, champions adjust, and you're a champion. Cheers, much love. See you next time.